You are listening to the American Buddhist Church podcast, and I am the Reverend Eric Butler, the founding priest and teacher of the American Buddhist Church, www.theamericanbuddhistchurch.org. Today we are talking about the process of enlightenment. What happens after you're enlightened? I said in the last podcast that enlightenment is the starting point. You hear the truths, you become enlightened, and then you have to practice that enlightenment until you finally reach nirvana. Nirvana is not a heavenly home. Nirvana is not heaven at all. Nirvana is a state of mind. The idea that nirvana is a heavenly goal is a religious idea that places nirvana out of the reach of the common people and creates those who pretend to have the gates to, the keys to the gates of nirvana, which creates a religious elite. This always happens with religions. When a philosophy turns religion, when truths turn religion, it always creates a hierarchy. It always creates people with the keys, the secret knowledge, those who do it better than other people. Buddha was very egalitarian. He wasn't worried about a religious hierarchy. In fact, he was bucking against the Brahmaic religious hierarchy. Remember, Buddhism was and is a Reformation movement within Hinduism. And that's why some people mistakenly attribute some of the Buddha's words to ideas that are still held by Hinduism, because it was a reaction against Hinduism. Hinduism had created a structure of caste and Brahmins and sacrifices and religious experts to the point that the people couldn't reach it at all. They had no chance of reaching happiness. But Buddha got sick of it and revolted against that, became enlightened himself after years of religious struggle to climb out from under his own delusion. And when he saw the truth, he communicated it, and we have it to this day. We have the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and the Four Seals of Buddhism. Those are the truth. Now, there are many other truths. Dependent arising is one of them. The idea of karma, which we'll talk about too. The idea of what is nirvana. All those things unpack later. The core of Buddhism is to recognize suffering, to recognize impermanence, to recognize those things that we torture ourselves with because we don't want to go away and we don't want to keep on being at the same time. We're aggravated with the way things are, so we don't want to keep on being like we are, but we don't want to quit being either. So we're caught in this terrible, terrible rubber band between two hands stretch-a-thon, where on the one hand, we are trying to get away from life and make it better, supposedly, or we're resisting dying because we don't want to cease to exist either. And we're on this teeter-totter that goes at the speed of light, and we live in a world of escapism and delusion because we don't want to see the truth. So enlightenment is when we understand the truth, apply the truth, and then go day by day by day, very mindfully, very systematically, very scientifically, examining ourselves, our environment, everything that happens to us through a new lens, a lens of dependent arising, a lens of causes and conditions, a sea of conditions. We begin to interpret everything in our lives, not from a self-centered point of view, but from a holistic point of view of look at this world we live in. It's a wonderment. In fact, it's a complete freak out. I'm going to give you an example in the next podcast of something that happened to me at Bob Evans' restaurant. And I think maybe that will let you know how enlightenment works out. And when we finally get to the place where we understand how things work out instantly, it becomes a mental pattern, then we live nirvana. Then we live that place of peace and detachment over and against what the Buddha called samsara, or the wheel of suffering. The wheel of suffering is that two-handed rubber band, stretchy teeter-totter I talked about. That's samsara. Not wanting life to be like it is, but not wanting to die either. Now listen, that's a trap. That's a real trap. But there's a way out. That's suffering, but there's a way out. And I'm going to be talking about the Four Noble Truths also, and we'll talk about this because I think Buddhism has not been taught in a way that Westerners can get to without any problem. I think that's what I'll do in the next podcast. I think I'll tell you about my journey through the morass of opinions, because I really got caught up in the morass of opinions. The elephant stuck in the mud. And this is Reverend Eric Butler, and I am the founding teacher and priest of the American Buddhist Church.org.